Hey guys, LolG here, and welcome to another episode of Topic of Discussion. Today, again, I am joined by the Spectre, because I couldn't find anybody else to join me at such short notice. But we'll get other people in, I promise. But yeah, roll the intro. So, basically today, the topic that we're going to cover is Star Wars. Now, we're not going to discuss Star Wars because, honestly, I could be here all day. So what we're going to do is discuss some Star Wars theories we have, maybe find some online, some of our own, and see how plausible those theories could be. See if, because there's lots of gaps in between Star Wars movies and Star Wars TV shows that need filling. And maybe these theories could potentially become real in the future. So yeah, we'll get into it, and I will start with the first question. With the first theory, that is. My theory is that Anakin actually brought balance to the Force. So like, with the prophecy, it was said that Anakin would bring balance to the Force. And everyone's like, oh no, he didn't because he became Darth Vader. And he sent it towards the dark side. But did he though? Did he? What if he brought balance to the Force?
That's an interesting thing to consider. That the Force itself is neutral. It's neither good or bad. That's why there's the light and the dark side.
Yeah.
So what if to actually bring balance, the Force decided that good needed a bigger evil to deal with in order to unite everyone in the end? So that's an interesting way to put at it, as in give everyone a major villain so they can all unite together against a common threat.
But Anakin also had like an ultimate balance because for a long time he was a Jedi. And then he became Sith. And I would argue at the point of his death he was neither. I would argue that if anything he would be what we would call a grey Jedi.
Grey Jedi. They have no alignment.
Yeah, that's why I would argue that Anakin was at the point of his death.
Also, it would make him a true embodiment of the Force, which is both.
But also, if you want to argue the point that Anakin didn't bring balance to the Force, what if he did? Because what if he had to be the evil, but then his kids, which he brought into the world, or into the universe, had to be the light?
That would be a good balance, yeah.
So he wiped out all of the Jedi, well, most of the Jedi, and the balance was literally him and his kids. His kids being on the light side, him being on the dark side. Do you want to share a theory?
Mine are more of what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
I've already got one in mind, but I'll leave that for last. So here's one. What if the Jedi found out about Order 66 before Palpatine could actually execute it? Which Jedis would survive if they did have the chance to warn everyone?
I think most of the Jedi would have survived. I think a few won't have because they would have... if they had found out about Order 66 before it was used, they would have went straight to the Chancellor's office and taken Palpatine in, if not killed him. I think they wouldn't have even... Anakin wouldn't have even found out about it. And I think it would have been a case of Mace Windu, Yoda, maybe Obi-Wan, Kit Fisto, Plo Koon, probably all of those going straight to the Chancellor's office and attempting to arrest him, if not, execute him.
Do you think Anakin would have lived through Order 66 if the Jedi knew exactly what was going to happen and his turning?
So his turning wasn't part of Order 66. So the only person that knew of Anakin's turning was Palpatine. So if Palpatine never spilt the beans, he wouldn't have turned. And also, like nobody would have found out if Palpatine never spilt the beans. But also with Palpatine being either executed or arrested, he wouldn't have had nearly as much influence on Anakin. And he probably wouldn't have turned.
But would Anakin still stay in the good side of the Force? Because he was showing signs of being Sith way before this. Would he have changed in the future or stayed?
He was, but he didn't really... Anakin didn't turn to Sith fully until he helped in the assassination of Mace Windu.
So would he have turned out to be more of a Mace Windu, going both dark and light, ish in a balance?
Yes.
If he wasn't forced to move to one side?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe Obi-Wan might have realised what was happening in the build-up, because there wouldn't have been a battle, because they would have gotten rid of basically the Sith, the main Sith. So
Yeah.
Obi-Wan could spend more time with Anakin, and I think Obi-Wan would have realised what was going on, and maybe consulted Mace Windu on it, with how Mace Windu is.
Right.
And Mace Windu would have taken on some training of Anakin for a while, and trained him how to use both sides of the Force. So mine's a lot less. My second theory, there's a lot less to think about. But in A New Hope, bear in mind this was the first movie created, so not as much thought was put into it.
Right.
But in chronological order, it's the fourth movie. In New Hope, do you think that Obi-Wan and Darth Vader recognized C-3PO and R2-D2?
I don't see why they shouldn't have been able to, right?
Yeah.
They have seen them before. So maybe they saw but chose not to do anything about it.
So why do you think they didn't say anything about it?
I would honestly think it's to preserve the two, because they do have a history with them, so saying anything might have jeopardized that. They wanted to keep them anonymous, perhaps.
So in A New Hope, I can see why Obi-Wan was a lot closer to R2-D2 when they were speaking, because
Right.
C-3PO had his mind wiped at the end of Episode 3, whereas R2-D2 still remembers everything.
It's just that he can't really speak.
Yeah. He can speak to C-3PO, but C-3PO thinks he's an idiot.
So by any chance did they just assume they were a non-threat and leave them be?
I believe so. But I think Obi-Wan does recognise them, but doesn't let on as much. I don't know about Darth Vader, because obviously you can't read facial expressions with Darth Vader.
He did create C-3PO. It would surprise me if he wouldn't recognize his own creation.
Exactly.
Right, if we were not told explicitly that the new Palpatine was a clone, is there any possibility Palpatine survived?
So, Palpatine is a very, very powerful Sith. Not the most powerful by far, but he's a very powerful Sith. He has a lot of knowledge in the Force, and under some circumstances I could see him staying alive. In other circumstances I really couldn't.
Right.
So when he was thrown down that, I believe it's the reactor core, I don't know though, his Sith lightning seemed to have reacted with the energy source of the Death Star, which
Right.
surely he couldn't have survived unless he found a way to become like a Sith ghost, and possibly put his consciousness into other bodies. That's the only way I could see him staying alive, because you hear him scream all the way down and then you see the explosion, so there's no way that he survived that unless he found a way to separate his consciousness from his body. Basically, I don't think there's any way he came out of that unharmed, is what I'm saying.
So there was no way he could have survived that explosion,
I don't think so.
or the energy.
I think fully in the new film, the newest film, I mean, I think he is a clone. I don't think it's explicitly said, but I think he's a clone.
Who activated the clone, or does he just have clones in random places?
See, this is where they haven't really delved into it in the movie. Dove into, I mean. So you've got, like, there's a possibility that once he died, he could have put something in place so that if he didn't get back to an area in time, then it would trigger the clone to activate. Or
Right.
he could have done something where, like, I don't know, maybe Snoke has always been alive and Snoke was the one who activated the clone. But some people think that Snoke is a faulty clone of Palpatine. There's a lot of different theories it could branch off into. So without it getting complicated, I think that he's always had clones and maybe programmed a droid to say, look, if I don't get back by this date, activate the clone.
Right, so he has to give, let's say, weekly or monthly feedback to send a signal to the specific droid. If he doesn't send that in time, activate a clone.
That would be my theory, but it's never explicitly said how the clone was activated, if it is a clone.
Because it's hard to believe that Palpatine was able to trust someone, an actual person, with any of this information, seeing as that would be something the rebels would definitely want to know and sift through all the information to actually find.
Yeah, I mean, well, in the some comics that have been made, so there is a full clone factory of Palpatine where he's got multiple bodies, but it's his younger self. And Luke finds the factory and accidentally activates them.
This should, just a quick question here. Why would Palpatine, his clone, be old? Or did he clone himself a bit younger and then grow to that state?
I don't know, so obviously you've got to put a lot of this down to the actor getting older, Ian McDiarmid getting way older. But you could argue that the clone might have activated as soon as Palpatine died, in which case he's aged over many years. But you could also say it wasn't a clone and Palpatine survived, and he looks that old because he is that old, and also the damage to his body being thrown down the shaft. Maybe that's why you don't really see him walking.
Because it always baffled me that if you could make a clone, why would you want it to be old when you can have one that's younger and retain all your power?
Yeah, so maybe it's not a clone, or maybe it's just a really old clone. But there's a lot of just theories you can dive into just based on that one theory. We could genuinely be sat here all day talking about that one theory. It's why the movie probably should have been more direct about what happened there. But who knows? With the whole sequel trilogy, it's rumored it might get reboot anyway, so none of this might be canon in 10 years' time. My third theory is, so it's another New Hope one. So in A New Hope, you see when Luke goes back to the Moisture Farm, you see Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's bodies on the floor outside of the hut, and they're burnt to a crisp. So Obi-Wan says that it's Imperial troopers. I don't think it is. I think that the person responsible for killing Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru is Boba Fett. And here's my explanation why. So outside the Moisture Farm, you see Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's burnt body. And Obi-Wan says that it's a Imperial trooper. I don't think it's an Imperial trooper. I think, and this is just my theory, so correct me if you think I'm wrong, I think Boba Fett killed Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru because in Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader says to Boba Fett when he's sending him to go and get Luke and the others, he says to Boba Fett, no incinerations this time. Meaning he's already sent Boba Fett to get someone or to do something with someone, and last time he did it, he burnt them alive.
But why would Boba Fett want to kill them?
For sport.
It's not unlikely, but he's a bounty hunter. It doesn't seem to me that he would just kill people without there being any monetary incentive in it or danger. Why would he just go to a farm and just kill them, right?
Maybe if they were getting in the way and just being irritating, maybe.
Well, they did live in a moisture farm. I suppose he could have wanted something from them and they resisted.
Yeah, or I don't know, like Uncle Owen could have had a weapon of some sort.
which he would want to, seeing as the person he was, raising.
Yeah. Like, he knew the risks of raising Luke, so he would have a weapon on the farm somewhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe Boba Fett felt threatened and burnt them both alive.
Or the classic one where they saw something they really shouldn't have.
Yeah. Because they don't, like, maybe they find out that, I don't know, Darth Vader is Anakin, because they didn't know that Darth Vader was Anakin at the time.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe I'm pretty sure Boba Fett knows that Darth Vader is Anakin. I think he's one of the only people that do know. That's my theory. My theory is that he killed them. Like, why would George Lucas just throw that line in the second film, no incinerations? If
Yeah,
he
just
hadn't already done it.
as a teaser, but not any more information to go with it. This is more of a broader question that covers all of Star Wars, really.
Mm-hmm.
Would the entire Star Wars universe have gone better without the Force, without the Sith, the Jedi? Would the universe be better off without it?
It's a weird thing, because the Star Wars universe, you haven't seen much, if not any, of the Clone Wars. There's an episode of the Clone Wars where they say the Star Wars universe was created by the Force. So without the Force, there wouldn't be a universe.
Then let me narrow down my question.
Mm-hmm.
What if there were no Sith or Jedi?
There were no Sith and no Jedi, no people using the light side or the dark side of the Force. I don't know, it probably would be better. I don't know how much safer it would be. I don't know how much of the technological advancement would still happen. I don't know, it could become a lot more violent because you'd have no real power which is controlling everyone, no real order, but you'd still have a planet which is full of kyber crystals and you can make lightsabers and death rays.
Good, yes.
So I can see why people with the Force are sort of in charge and can bring the order, but I can see also why without them you would just have a total mess of a system.
So you believe there needs to be that balance of good and bad to keep the universe stable?
I believe so, yes. Because it was kind of like, in that episode, there was the main guy who was kind of like just the Force, he was kind of like a grey Jedi.
Yeah.
And he had a son and a daughter. The son was the dark side, the daughter was the light side. And I believe one of them died. I think it was the daughter. And the balance just went off. The planet started being corrupted, and basically this family had been there since the dawn of time. They were the Force. They were like the living embodiment of the Force. And when the daughter died, the planet just got corrupted. Even though the dad... I think the dad died first, and then there was the daughter and the son left. The daughter died, and there was just the son left, and the planet was corrupted by the dark side of the Force. So I think you do need that balance. Yeah, I think both need to exist.
Although some might argue with that example, because one died, the entire planet went into corruption. If the other died, would the corruption cease?
Potentially, or life on the
if
planet
they both died, yeah.
Because maybe the Force is keeping the life.
Is an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, maybe the Force is like the life force of the world, of the universe. With no Force, there is no universe.
Right. So for as long as the Force is around, there will always be Jedi and Sith somewhere.
My final theory, and I think it'll be your favourite one, Abdul.
Right.
Is Jar Jar Binks a Sith Lord?
Okay, this is a meme question, but I'll entertain it. I'll say one thing. There's no evidence to say he isn't.
True.
Think about it. All the powerful people we know Stormtrooper AIM is bad and all, but Jar Jar Binks is canonically alive.
Yes.
Nothing bad happened to him. He could just be playing an idiot this entire time, but be an absolute mastermind who has been planning everything. Hell, he could have been the one who was behind Palpatine, and you would never know.
Well, I'm pretty
sure.
And
yet he still lives on.
I'm pretty sure Palpatine's home planet is Naboo, which is where Jar Jar is from. So they could have been talking for years before the Phantom Menace.
And the entire idiotic approach, stumbling around, is a clever ruse, which actually Palpatine used the kind of same thing. He pretended to be a normal person, and beneath all that, he was a Sith.
Yeah.
What's to say that Jar Jar didn't do the exact same thing, but on a grander scale? Pretend to be an idiot, but the absolute mastermind behind everything.
Exactly. He even got himself into the Senate, which was insane.
Considering how stupid he is.
Like, why would you ever let anybody like Jar Jar into the Senate?
And where's Jar Jar now?
He was also the one that announced to elect emergency power to Palpatine.
Everything is leading up way too easily to that thing being the major evil.
Exactly.
Because many people would have just said, if you think about it correctly, Jar Jar doesn't really serve too much in the story. Why not kill him off? Why make him someone who just exists?
I have no explanation for this. It's like, I think he could be, but at the same time, he could just genuinely be a lucky idiot.
So he could just be someone with such intense good luck that he's able to escape that many deaths and somehow live.
Pretty much.
Or the alternate one where he planned everything and so far he's just been playing like 6D chess. The theory going around is we know that Rey is a Palpatine, yeah?
Yes.
So far she's supposed to be revolutionizing or be the main Jedi and all that.
Yeah.
The main representation of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
But we know she has some dark side in her because Palpatine.
Yeah.
So are they setting Rey up for the next story arc of her being the next catalyst towards there being another Sith Empire? As in, will she switch at some point?
See, I don't know, because we've got more chance of there being a reboot of the sequels than there being a follow-on from the sequels. So I don't think we'll really ever find that out. And the whole story might change. She might not be a Palpatine in the reboot. We don't know. But I don't think that she would go to the dark side unless something major happened in her life.
Then here's a story I propose.
Okay.
She's currently the main force of the Jedi. Let's say she starts, she collects all the people who are gifted in the Force, starts training them.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say within them there are some troubled individuals who end up murdering more than a few of the others.
Yes.
What if this, out of some kind of petty squabbles or something, disagreements, they start getting wiped out? What if this becomes something that forces her to change her view on what the Jedi are, starting to see the Jedi as selfish and bad, and instead joining the other side herself, becoming a Sith, vowing to stop the existing of Jedi?
I don't think she would change her mind there, because with her being the last Jedi, and these would be her scholars, she'd be teaching these students. If that sort of thing happened again, and the reason why I say again is because that's literally the story arc of Ben Solo. He got annoyed with Luke, and then him and the Knights of Ren killed all the students. But she already knows that that's happened before, and I feel like she would have enough trust in the Force that it would rectify itself.
Actually, it brings about the story. Remember that woman from Fallen Order who spent the entire time, the Jedi who did not use her lightsaber?
Yes.
Something happened with a student. The student was tortured, and she was also tortured to give up some information. And eventually she almost joins the dark side herself in trying to kill Vader for what she did to the student, until Cal Kestis stops her, reminding her that if she goes through with this, she becomes a Sith herself, and how close she was. I believe a similar thing could happen to Rey in certain circumstances, but there's also the chance that Rey could pull back and stay a Jedi, unless what happens is truly that intense.
It would have to be like incredibly intense for Rey to change her sides, because she's already gone through so much in the short years that she became a Jedi. Some would argue, if you look into it, she went through more than Luke. I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah.
personally, but some would argue that. But then again, Luke didn't change. He just became a recluse. He didn't really go to the dark side. He just cut himself off from the Force.
Unless they tried to pull something like being part Palpatine gives a sort of doorway connection to Palpatine himself, as in shows up as a negative Force ghost, I suppose, from the Sith.
Yeah.
Always on her left, feeding her information and lies, and on her right, she does have the Jedi, so it could be a constant turmoil within one person.
Yeah.
I think that could make a good story arc, a person balancing between good and bad.
The thing is with a lot of these theories is a lot of the ones that you've voiced today is they're all linked to the sequels. The sequels are so ridden with plot holes and missing information that you can name one theory and it could link to several other theories, and we could be here all day. I think the sequels do need a reboot to sort of clear this up.
Just a matter of when, really.
Yeah, I think the main thing we found out today from these theories, which I didn't think we'd like find out anything. I thought we would just voice some fun opinions and see what happens. But what we found out is that the sequels are so full of plot holes that millions of theories could be made out of them. That's all I really have to say on the matter.
Although I suppose Star Wars could do a similar Marvel thing and just make a Star Wars What If.
Yeah, they could do that. I would watch that.
Would certainly solve many questions along with actually entertaining their fans. Do that, and then if they are going to be doing a reboot the movies correctly after showing us all the different possibilities.
Right, well, shall we end that there then? Before we delve into
Of course.
a million theories. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, this episode. If you did enjoy it and you are on Spotify listening, remember to follow the podcast and wait for next week's episode. If you haven't already seen the last 2 episodes, make sure to check them out as well. And if you're on YouTube, leave a like, comment what you'd like to see on the series, who you'd like to see, and subscribe, because that always helps with the algorithm. And before I go, I'm not going to do the salute with my fingers as I usually would, because it's a Star Wars episode. I'm going
Please don't do it.
So, remember to have dreams, do dreams, and live dreams, and I will see you guys in the next one.